Let's talk a little bit about the available lenses for the Canon R3. So first up, you need to understand how Canon has had many different systems with cameras and lens mounts and what works between what. So this camera uses an RF lens mount and uses RF lenses, and that's where everything works at its very best, you might say. And you can use the older DSLR lenses, which are known as EF and EFS lenses, if you use an adapter, and I'll show you that adapter here in a moment. Now, Canon also has cameras that have a cropped frame on them, and they still have an RF mount, and they can use RF lenses, but they can also use RFS lenses. And you want to be careful about probably not using the RFS lenses on this R3, but we'll talk about that more closely in a moment. So that's Canon's cropped frame mirrorless camera. Now, kind of the weird thing is that they have two crop frame mirrorless systems, not just cameras, systems. The EOS M6 Mark II, for instance, is an EFM mount camera. It has its own special mount, and these are designed to be very small, lightweight cameras and lenses, and it's a very nice system. They have some good options in there. Not a lot of professional, serious lenses, but it's a nice, very small, compact travel system. And so this RFS system is more kind of as a junior system to their RF lenses. Now they, for a long time, had DSLR equipment. Full frame, like the Canon 5D Mark IV, had an EF lens mount, used EF lenses. Cameras like the 90D had the same EF lens mount, but they were able to use the EFS lenses, which were properly fitted for that crop frame sensor in there. I feel very, very sorry for somebody who has never used an interchangeable lens camera and they walked in on this slide, because this would make it sound like an incredibly confusing system, which I guess maybe it is a little bit, but once you're into it, you'll know which lenses to use. So the big difference between the RF and the RF lenses has to do with what type of sensor they are designed for. The RF lenses are designed for a full frame sensor. When light comes through, they project an image that is big enough to be captured by that entire image area of that sensor. The RFS lenses are designed a little differently so that they produce a smaller image circle appropriate to the smaller size sensor that is in those cameras. And so you typically want to keep those lenses on the appropriate cameras. If you decide to try to use an EFS lens on a full frame camera, well, it's not going to have the coverage area and you're going to get vignetting or darkening of the corners. You can use an RF lens on an RFS type camera. It's just going to kind of overshoot and give you a larger image circle than is necessary. It's maybe a little on the wasteful side to some degree, but it will work perfectly fine and give you great image quality. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the RF lenses. We have a little red oval as our mounting mark. Most of the lenses, not all, will have an autofocus manual focus switch. Some lenses, not very many, will have a zoom lock, which is for the zoom ring so that it doesn't accidentally zoom out when the camera is being carried over the shoulder or maybe being pointed on a tripod up or down. And so be aware that some lenses have that, but not that many. Most lenses will have a manual focus ring, and a lot of these RF lenses will have a control ring, which is kind of a new feature from the previous DSLR series of cameras and lenses. And the control ring is something that you get to have control over what it particularly does. And so you can dive into the menu system and set up a custom function for that ring to do a particular function, whatever it is that you find helpful and necessary. Most lenses will have a specific lens mount that is designed for that particular lens. And so you want to make sure that you are using the right lens hood for the appropriate lens. Most all lenses will also have filter threads so that you can screw on either protection or image altering filters of some sort, and they'll usually be in different specific sizes that are pretty common in the industry. And so be aware that that circle through with the line through it is the diameter size of that particular lens. All right, so the manual focus ring on Canon lenses can be adjusted and customized. And one of the things you can do is you can change which direction you turn for infinity or close-up focusing. You can do it normal or you can do it reverse. Now, the way Canon lenses focus is, well, normal, I would say. There are some brands, Nikon, Fuji, that focus in a reverse fashion as far as where is infinity and minimum focus. And if you want to change your Canon lenses to match these other systems, well, you can do so in the autofocus menu. You can also change the ring sensitivity. And so you can have it set up more for still photography or for video. Still photographers like to be very accurate, and they don't care how much time it takes, and they're not worried about doing it over and over again. And so depending on how fast you turn the ring will vary the speed at which it is manually focusing. For a cinematographer who wants to, say, practice a focus rack from one subject to the next, they want the lens to go in the exact same speed. No matter how fast or slow they go, it goes exactly to the point that they want. And so it's a little different way of manually focusing, and it depends on what your priorities are, but it's nice to have that option in there. And of course, you can customize with the control ring. You can go into the customized dials and set up any of the different options for customizing that control ring. All right, let's talk about some of the lenses. Let's go with some of the more popular, serious ones to start with, the fast zooms. All right, so 24-70 2.8, probably one of the most practical, top quality lenses you could get for the camera. Now, as I go through the list here, you will notice in the last line, I'm going to show you how good the lens is at image stabilization. And there's going to be two numbers. One is what stabilization does the lens itself have? There are some cameras that do not have image stabilization built in. So if you were to mount that lens on one of those cameras, how much stabilization would you get? And in the case of the 24-70, it would be 5 stops of stabilization. If you put it on the R3, which does have built-in stabilization, the body and lens stabilization works together to sometimes get you a bit more stabilization. And in this case, it gets you up to 8 stops of stabilization. All right, this is one of their L series lenses that has the red ring around it. It is their luxury, it's their best quality lenses that they make, and it knows that you are getting a professional quality lens. So if you want wide angle, the 15-35, and if you want telephoto, the 70-200, this is a great 3-lens combination to have that will cover you in all sorts of subjects that you might want to shoot. Now, just to top themselves and top everyone else, they decided to go one step further with the 28-70. They reduced the zoom range from the 24-70 a little bit, and they went big with an f2.0 aperture. And this is going to be a fantastic lens for certain people who don't mind carrying a fairly large and heavy lens, but really value that fast aperture with a fairly good range in there. And so this would be really good for an event photographer. Now, one of the things you'll notice with Canon, as with pretty much all the manufacturers, is they like putting a lot of letters on their lenses to designate little things about their lens. Here's the key. I'm not going to go entirely through the key here with you, but this will help you decode what some of these different lenses are doing and what they are good at. Next up, let's talk about some more general zooms. They do also have some less expensive lenses. If you are looking to save weight, these lenses are generally pretty good optically. They tend to be made with more plastics. They're not as durable. They're not as weather sealed. They don't have a constant aperture on them, and they are priced appropriately, so they'll be quite a bit more affordable. I don't think these 3 lenses are best on this particular camera, but they are perfectly workable on them. One of the places that I kind of like is this kind of happy medium is these are still L lenses over on the right side of the screen, but they're a little bit slower in aperture and for people who want a little bit smaller size lens. I don't know that they're the best design for this particular camera. They work perfectly fine. I'll be happy using them on there, but I know a lot of people who want this are going to want those faster apertures. Now, a quick note on the 100-500. In the past, I first off didn't like lenses that had variable apertures. I still don't. I just like having a fixed aperture if possible. On this one, they decided to give you a little extra reach and have that aperture vary a little bit more. Second thing is I did not like lenses that went any slower than 5.6 because they tended to autofocus very, very poorly. Things have changed in the world of mirrorless. This lens, even though it only goes to 7.1 at 500, still focuses remarkably well. And it's just a different world between DSLRs and mirrorless. And this 100-500 does an excellent job focusing, even though the aperture slows down to 7.1. The camera still does a great job at it. I still don't like the fact that it's a variable aperture, but I probably wouldn't like the size of it nor the price of it if it was an f4 or f4.5 constant, but it'd be fun to see, that's for sure. All right, some premium primes. All right, this is where Canon has some fantastic lenses, and I know they'll be bringing out many more lenses in this category as the years move along. All of these are just going to be some of the best lenses that you can possibly get for these focal ranges and in what they do. I'm not going to go into the details of all of these. That'll have to be for a Canon class at some other point down the line. Now, there are some affordable primes also, and some of these are downright cheap, but definitely in the affordable range. And so if you are looking for something lightweight, just to kind of cover your bases in a certain area, all of these lenses, and probably more to come in the future, are going to be some nice options that are optically pretty good. They're typically not as weather sealed and as well built as the L series lenses, but they tend to be pretty good options and very good value for the money, in my opinion. When it comes to telephoto, Canon has some interesting options. For those of you who want the maximum amount of telephoto in the minimum size, there is a 600 and 800 f11. These are kind of unique lenses because they need to be extended before they are to be used. There's a compact retracted position that they're in for easier storage, and they're also f11 and only f11. That's not just the maximum aperture, that's the only aperture. But they've done that to save size and space and make them a little bit more affordable. And I think they're going to be a big hit with a lot of photographers who want something affordable and small, but still reach out there quite far. Now, their large telephoto lenses have always known to be fantastic lenses. Now, the 400 and the 600, these are very much based on their SLR, 400 and 600 millimeter lens. Kind of looks like with an adapter welded onto the back of the lens. They're still great lenses, but they weren't specifically designed for mirrorless. Nothing wrong with that. They still work great, give you great image quality, have super fast focusing. Now, they did make an 800 and 1200, and it seems to me like they took the shortcut here and they just put on a doubler and an extender on the back as opposed to redesigning the lens to make an 800 and 1200. These are kind of interesting lenses. I think Canon just really wanted to have lots of telephoto lenses, and maybe a lot of government agencies and security places would buy Canon to have all of these telephoto lenses. But it does give the rest of us who are interested in bird photography or surfing or something else like that some interesting options out here. Now, they do make extenders, 1.4 and 2x, which will extend the reach of these by magnifying them. You will lose a stop of light with the 1.4 and 2 stops of light with the 2x in there, but this can take your one lens and turn it into 2 or 3 valuable lenses. There are adapters so that you can use older EF lenses on this camera. And so they do make 3 different adapters, depending on if you want a base adapter, one with a control ring, or one with filters that you can drop in. And this can be really handy for shooting video or for other reasons in there. But the great thing about these adapters is that it opens the world of EF lenses, of which Canon was developing for about 30 years, and there are lots and lots of great EF lenses out there, and there's probably some interesting good deals out there if you're looking to experiment and play around with some of these older lenses. And so these adapters work really well, in my opinion. I've shot a lot of sports and other things with these adapters, and they work really well on these older EF lenses. So don't feel like you are getting anything second rate there. It's very good performance with those older EF lenses. All right, that's a few little tips, advice, and thoughts on the lenses. And so that covers most of the outside of the camera. And next up, we're going to have a number of sections diving through the menu.